Hey there, everybody. Just doing a quick tech check here for people watching the replay. If you forward the video up to the 5-minute mark, that's when we're going to start. Glad to see people here live. That's going to make it a lot more fun. All right, let's make sure that we're sharing the screen. Okay, that looks great. Y'all are hearing echo and feedback. Thank you for. Okay, how are we doing now? There was some studio sound feature that I clicked on. Meta, let me know if that is fixed. Hey there, everybody. Ika, Allison, Melissa, Nicole, Carrie. Oh, good, good. A little bit of a buzz there, Stacy. Okay. Stacy's buzzing. Not good, Stacy. Come on now. It's 12:58 p.m. Eastern. Not good. Good to see some familiar faces. New and old. John, Barbara, Debbie. Oh, we got some Chico colleagues here. I got a video coming for you, Chico colleagues, soon. Cindy. We're just as the kids say, vibing here in the Stewart household today, Friday, August 7th. My kids don't say that. Maureen from Vancouver. Maureen, I got to come to your school someday. I haven't forgotten. We will be back. Okay. Nicole, Misty, Carrie. Got lots of familiar faces. I love it. I love it. We need each other. Okay. All right. We'll be starting in about 1 minute and 20 seconds. I just wanted to get on early today, make sure that all technology was stabilized. You know, I'm learning. Slow but sure. But distance learning, I'm going to get you. I'm coming, distance learning. I'm going to get you. Hello, Robert, Diane, Carly, Susie, Emily, Cindy, Lauren. So good, so good. I want to see more of you all. Oh my goodness, this is wonderful. Let's see, make this a little bit bigger. I like this starting a little bit early. Lets me get all comfy. All right. Okay, 30 seconds. Do I got some cold coffee here? I do. Didn't have time to do that. My daughter and I took a quick run before this. Well, actually, we were going to take a quick run, but then she was like, Dad, I'm not doing that. It's too hot out, man. So I took a quick run, took a shower. Got all fancied up for everybody. Want to make sure we have a great time. Onward. Let's do this indeed, Carrie. All right. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our people viewing this after the fact. So grateful to be on this journey with you. I am Dave Stewart, high school teacher in West Michigan. And I'm a writer. Well, stealing my thunder. Let me just get a couple practicalities out of the way. Okay. People were asking if this is going to be recorded. Yes. People have asked, how can I share this? I'm so glad if you share this with a team member or a school leader. I would love it though, if you want to do whole school, whole team, shoot me an email. For one thing, I'm planning to have a polished version of this that'll have a higher playback quality probably. That could be used in a team or a whole school environment. Planning to have that around early next week. And yeah, I just email me if you want license to use it with a bunch of people. But I'm happy to have you share with that, that colleague across the hallway or across the digital hallway, or that principal who you want to convince for me to come to your school. Yeah, we're going to do that again someday, by the way. We are. I was leading professional development 2 days ago in the morning time for teachers in New Mexico, in the afternoon for teachers in South Dakota. And it was so fun, but it is so much more fun to be with human beings. We're going to talk about that today. I know we feel that. For my participants, my old timers, you old hatters, you know how it is. Crowdcast is so cool because that little button, ask a question, immediately flags the question for me. I will not lose it. I will answer it. And you, after the fact, can click right on that question and it'll take you directly in the video to where you asked the question. So if I'm going through something, I'm talking about the first day of school and I'm zipping through it, you want me to say a little more about this or that, right away, click ask a question, throw that question in the chat so that I can hit it during the Q&A. I have budgeted a full hour for Q&A, an hour for my remarks, an hour for Q&A. Obviously, you can catch it on the replay if you want, but that's just what I want to do. So yeah, ask questions. Amy, I see yours. You'll be able to access this afterwards. You should get an automated email to the replay. But if you just copy the URL in your browser right now, you'll also going to that same web address will pull up this replay. Okay. All right. Well, for my new friends, oh, look at that phantom bullet point. For my new friends, you need to know that Dave Stewart is a husband and a father. I take those roles to be sacred, those roles to be solo jobs where nobody else is going to be the husband of Crystal. Nobody else is going to be the father of Hattie, Laura, Marlena, and Dean. So I have to do this part of my life, which I love, which I'm all in on. I'm so thankful to be a career educator, so thankful for the years yet to come. I mean, plenty of things drive me crazy all the time, but I'm very thankful to do this work. I believe in it. I believe it matters. I believe every day lives are in the balance. It's intense. It's beautiful, but I can't sacrifice my family on the altar. And that's really what has driven my writing for the last 8 years. That's what's driven my research into really, I mean, you can see it in my writing, getting down to the base of things that matter a lot in teaching, understanding the base really, really well. And then from there, building out simple, efficient interventions, simple, efficient protocols or activities or routines that I can use again and again and again in a million ways with my students without stressing myself out or searching on Teachers Pay Teachers every night or constantly living as a teacher hand to mouth. That's what my writing, that's the theme. So the blog is a beautiful mess. There's 600 plus articles. If you click where it says blog at davestewartjr.com, you'll see the whole list all the way back to 2012 when I was a punk in my 20s writing about the Common Core. The central question of the work this year and always is, for me, how do we achieve optimal long-term flourishing outcomes for students, long-term flourishing outcomes for ourselves as teachers? They're tied together without sacrificing our whole lives on the altar of success. And today, when we approach our topic, I want us to keep that big question in mind. I also want us to keep these 4 words in mind. I have to start PD with the fact that most PD will tell you how to achieve more learning all the time, more learning. And we love it. We appreciate it. Thank you, PD. But very frequently, it will not talk to you about how to manage the added stress of doing more, of adding one more thing on the plate. I mean, we give lip service to the fact that that's problematic, but we don't often deal with it rigorously, deal with it like we would a physical malady. But it is a malady of the spirit and the body when we are overworked, overpressured. It is. We've known for over 100 years the Yerkes-Dodson curve. I like the shorthand I use in my head is, Dave, are you on the wrong side of Yerkes-Dodson right now? Because most of us, most of the time, are when we're default navigating teaching. And I got to tell you, I can see it coming like a freight train in a tunnel with a bright light on the front. We are going to be hyper pressured this year to try to make distance learning or in-person learning with mass or hybrid, or there's 98,000 different buildups that I've heard about in the last week. There's going to be so much pressure to make sure that that is excellent. And we all believe that it should be, but we have to keep an eye on the stress aspect. We've got to, work smarter, not harder. Say it all the time, but like it's super cliche, but it literally is something that has to be thought about with great intensity, just as much intensity as building a lesson, if not more. Right. So if you're feeling during this whole summer, the last 5 months of your life, if you feel this inner roller coaster, this tumult of frustration and anxiety and excitement and encouragement and fear and depression and all that stuff, hey, welcome to every teacher's heart in the country, maybe the world. So a grounding exercise that is really helpful and important is to make sure that we define Everest. I've been writing about this forever. I rarely lead a PD without it. But I think this year it deserves a fresh look. Even if you've been having an Everest sentence on your classroom wall forever, what do you hope your work accomplishes this year? What's your objective? Boil it down to a sentence. I remember early on, I shared this exercise with Mike Schmoker. Well, I shared my book with him to try to get him to write a foreword to it. And he said, great job. You just got to make sure Everest sentences for teachers talk about academics. If all that your sentence is relationships, as we'll get to, that's a problem, because your job isn't just to build relationships. Neither is mine. That's a part of the job, a beautiful part, maybe the most beautiful. But ultimately, I'm tasked with something else. So I would encourage you, and I know many of you have sentences like this. Put them in the chat. Put them in the chat. What is your sentence this year? What are you trying to accomplish? My long time sentence has been, we're all about becoming better thinkers, readers, writers, speakers, and people. I've heard so many superior sentences since the book came out, these 6 things. So many superior sentences that I've long wanted to modify my sentence, but I'm going to be revisiting that as I approach the start of my own school year, and asking how could I add some more sharpness to that for this year's unique constraints. And by the way, if you've never heard about me or my work, this is the most organized treatment of my thinking that is currently in existence. So I've got a million different pieces of work I've put out into the world, but this is the encapsulation, this book. And you can get a total clear idea of what the book will offer you in the first chapter. So if you want, check that out. It was made to help. It was made to help me. Always love Greg Mcewen's thought process on clarity of purpose. Has anybody in this session felt at any point this summer like problems are festering and multiplying? How about this week? How about today? Have you ever felt distracted when you think about the fall? Like you're wasting time and energy on trivialities. Right. Like what should your Bitmoji be like? I mean, this is the stuff that if we don't have clarity of purpose, you know, we just spin our wheels. And I laugh because I do it. I mean, I talk about it all the time, and it happens to me every day. I'll start to go off in a rabbit trail. I just have to bring it back. Everest is a discipline even more than it is a sentence. It's a practice, a rule of life that you place upon yourself. So don't just write it in the chat. Write it somewhere that you're going to see it this year, whether you're working at school or at home. Okay, so I mean, we're just building out principles right now so we can attack our problem of relationships. Principle next one is that every single one of us is united to all the other teachers that we teach with, administrators that we work with, because we all exist as professionals to promote the long-term flourishing of students. Specifically, schools, unlike counseling centers, schools promote long-term flourishing specifically by teaching students to master things. This is really important. I know a lot of schools are planning really intense social emotional learning stuff in the fall. And, you know, every plan needs to be analyzed its own way, but you just have to realize that, you know, a school's task is to help human beings master things they wouldn't otherwise master outside of the school. And I think the evidence for this is all over the place, right? When people can't reason scientifically, when they can't analyze the data coming from scientists, then you start to get crazy misinformation spreading all over the internet. And it spreads because people believe it, because they can't think scientifically. When people don't understand history, then they think that today's news is the end, not having any perspective on the fact that there are patterns throughout history, and understanding them gives us insight into how to act as citizens in a democratic society. So we could do this type of thing for all the different disciplines. We can do it for physical education, music, and so on. All of the things that we do are for the point of enhancing long-term flourishing. And of course, the way that you get kids to build expertise in English or third grade reading or whatever is that they have to do stuff. Right now, we're starting to get to relationships, the relational aspect. If a child doesn't do anything in our class, if a child doesn't do anything in a distance learning class, then the child is not going to grow in mastery. Right? If you don't read the article, then you're not going to gain the knowledge that the article could offer you. You're not going to be able to engage in the discussion that your class has around the article, and so on and so forth. We need students to do work, and we need to do it with care. And this is so important. Early on in my career, I didn't really submit myself to this, but you cannot coerce a human being into caring. You can coerce them into doing work sometimes, right? You can use coercion to get them to do work, but to get them to care, you have to partner with what they believe about your class. You got to cultivate certain beliefs about learning. All right. We're not going to talk a lot about the beliefs today. We're focused on building relationships starting the year online. But the beliefs, I mean, that's what all my student motivation work is about. That's chapter 2 of my book. That is critical understanding if your goal is to get children to do work with care, and to, I'm seeing the word joy pop up in the comments. Like, it's really hard to be joyful when you're just coercing human beings all the time, you know? Yeah. All right. So here's our question. This is what we're thinking about. How does this all relate to relationships? So guess what people tell me when I ask this? I've probably asked 3,000 people this question. Guess the number one word that we hear. I'll give you a hint. It rhymes with relationships. Whether I'm asking teachers in Utah or Washington or Michigan or Australia, a very common answer to this question is relationships. And that should give us some pause, because that means that, I mean, if I ask several thousand teachers, so now you've got tens and tens of thousands of collected hours of observation, hours of practice. And if a significant portion of those people respond in a very brief exercise like this, oh yeah, one of the most important methods for motivating students is relationships, that means there's something there, right? There's something there. And in fact, it leads a lot of people to start to say things like it's all about relationships. If you've been reading my blog for a while, you know that I don't really buy into that. It's an overstatement. We all talk about this analogy, don't we, in education? Once you're around for a little while, it's like, yep, seen that. So the pendulum really comes because so little attention is paid in professional development, in teacher development, to deep understanding of the basics, of the fundamentals. You can only pendulumize the people who are able to get behind an underexplored slogan. Albert Einstein said that you got to simplify things as much as they can be simplified, but don't go past. Because once you make something more simple than it actually is, it's not the thing anymore, right? Like you've made something else. So schooling can't be both about this and this. It can't be about both of those things completely. So I think it's much better to say and to think, right? And this hopefully helps us to, settle our hearts a little bit when we think about distance education, when we think about starting the year online for the first year in our careers. Hopefully this will settle us down and help us realize, yes, relationships are really valuable currency for helping children to want to do work and to want to do it well. They're really valuable currency. And yes, like here's the mourning part, the grieving part that I think a lot of us are going through, consciously or not. Relationships are also one of the sweetest things about teaching. They're beautiful. They're rich. They're as unique as every individual child that we teach. There is nothing like coming into life with a multifaceted, complicated, complex, and beautiful human being. Nothing like it. And we teachers get to do it year after year. All these different children, watch the way that like a bunch of chemicals, they react with one another in a classroom. And yes, it is often very frustrating and difficult and confusing and confounding, but it's also so beautiful and rich. So the good news is that we will be able to build relationships this year, okay? We're going to do that. We're totally going to do that. And when you start to feel the hyperventilation, you got to take a walk. You got to go into solitude. You got to find that place where you can go and just kind of detach for a minute and recenter on what it is that you're trying to do. So if we were in person, or if we were doing a live Zoom, I would actually, this is where I would use a breakout time, okay? Because I would say, all right, we've established some really important grounding principles. Can't skip those. So now let's talk about what we already know. Now let's begin from the strength of our expertise, whether you're a year-in expert or you're a 20-year expert or somewhere in between or on either side. You do know something about building relationships with students. So what would you normally be doing to start the school year from a relationship building standpoint? What would you normally do? I would have you share that with a breakout room. We're not going to today, but please, thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. Using surveys, get to know you four corners. Cool. I would love if people in the comments would just share what are some basic things you would be planning on if we were going back to school regular, and it's 2019 all over again. Talk to students about their interests. Okay, great, right. Share these in the comments. So step one is just take what we already would do because we know it, we've experienced it. It's not some random person's blog post. We've inhabited the things that you're writing about. And now just make the tweaks, make the adjustments. Ask yourself, if there was a really simple way, make sure you include that. If there was a really simple way to translate that to online, to Google Classroom, to Zoom, to Canvas, to whatever you got going, what would it be? What would it look like if somebody just came to me and said, oh, I see that you do interactive games, Barbara. Well, this is a real simple way to do it. What would it look like if someone were to come and say that to you? And you just be that person. We start from here because we're smart, because we know stuff. We've got all this knowledge. Some things that we'll come back to that. Some basic things like I saw some people asking about day one, right? What do we do on day one? The first question that we ask is, what do we normally try to do on day one? Some common objectives on day one are like people are saying, get to know a bit about your students. I'm seeing six-word memoirs, team building, surveys. So how could you on day one, whatever day one looks like with your unique circumstances, asynchronous, synchronous, whatever, there's so many different ways schools are doing this. What would it look like to get to know a bit about your students? And I see a lot of creativity in what you all are saying. I see some of your own personality in what you all are saying. So what would it look like to make it a little bit creative? To make a first day, get to know a bit about you, a little bit creative. Another very common and I think strong first encounter practice is to share what you believe about students. I will show you and give you an example of how I do that with my students here on the next slide. But it is important, I think, as professionals to communicate right out front. This is what I believe about teaching and learning. Obviously, that's just step one. Then we have to prove it with our actions for the next 180 days. That's the hard part. But it's, that's something that you can do. You could do that asynchronously via video. You could do that synchronously at the start of a Zoom. You could do it in a letter home to students. I'm seeing some letters to students in the side. I think I saw that. Thank you, by the way, everybody, for sharing these. That's going to add so much of a richness to this. And then, this is probably the thing that we're most worried about. How do we do classroom management over Zoom? What does that even look like? Like, we're not in a classroom, but we definitely do need to have procedures, right? On the first day of school or first week of school, I'm going to tell students, hey, this is where I want you to turn in your work. And as my career has progressed, there's a digital component to that in more and more of my years. So this year, if you're starting from a distance, it's for sure a digital component. But you're going to want to walk that through with students, even if every other teacher is doing it. Because in a normal class, at least in my high school, I would explain to my students, this is how you turn in work. I would explain to them, this is what I'd like you to do when you enter the classroom, so that we can start in the way that I want us to start. Matthew Kay's book I've been reading and thinking on. Matthew Kay is the author of Not Light, But Fire, How to Have Meaningful Race Conversations in the Classroom. Very cool book for the topic that it's targeting, but also just a great book on pedagogy. Like I respect Matt and the way that he thinks about building relationships with students. Yes, the strong central theme of that book is how to have meaningful race conversations, but it could almost have a second subtitle, how to build a great classroom community. So Matt likes to start the class period with burn 5, he calls it, burn 5 minutes. And he literally just takes the first 5 minutes of class to connect with students. I personally try to do that through moments of genuine connection, before, after, or during independent work in class. So just think about what you do and ask yourself, how can I build new procedures for my specific circumstances? How can I build new procedures for my specific circumstances? And I'm going to move on, but this is the part where if you want me to talk more about something, use ask a question at the bottom of the screen, okay? So I told you one thing we should do is state what we believe to our students. I hang this up in my classroom over the door, the very top center of the screen. So I tell them, I don't just read off it. Usually I don't even look to it, but I'm kind of going like this, and I say, there's 4 things that you need to know about me as your teacher right out of the gate. You need to know that I do think you fit in this academic community. People like you totally do work like this. That has been true for way longer than you or I have been alive, and it'll be true for you this year. I believe that. I believe there's a place for you here where you can be yourself and also be successful. Yes, I do think you're going to succeed. I'm going to set high challenges for you because I know that you're capable of it, and I respect you, and I believe that you can succeed. I know that when you're having difficulty gaining knowledge, building skill, I know that there are efforts you can take to make those things easier. I know that. And I know that over time you can improve. I will teach you smart effort, what it looks like for my class. I'm looking forward to that. And finally, students, I do think that learning English, reading the novels we're going to read, looking at the text we're going to look at, having the writing assignments that we're going to be having, the pop-up debates, I think it matters. I think this class and the work that we do is going to shape you into something different, something new and improved, as all classes should. So I'm so excited to get to teach you this year. Okay, so I didn't have a stopwatch right there. You got a recording. You can see how long it takes, but it's the first day of school. I need to state for you my beliefs. I'm doing a little motion off to the side. So digitally, I don't know. It depends on maybe it's on the syllabus and we're going over the syllabus. It's right at the top. Maybe send my letter to students. I'm reading it aloud to them through Zoom. I don't know exactly how it could look. It depends on your platform, but this is just an example of the type of thing that you normally do on the first day. Let the students know a bit about your beliefs, and then just translate it. We're just going to do it here and take a swing, right? Yeah, take a swing. So I'll go back to this. A central goal, and I thank John Reynolds for this. John's in the room now. John pointed me towards some of this research from community college distance teachers. The community college folks have been doing distance learning for students like ours for a long time, right? Students like ours, I mean, huge range of ability level, huge range of living circumstances at home, huge range of motivation and preparation. And community colleges take students with this huge range, and they have to try to get them to not drop out. And unlike for us K-12 teachers, they're welcome to drop out of community college, right? I mean, they're free to go. But a community college really needs them to stay, really needs them to stick with it. So distance learning, the best research I can find, like classroom wisdom style research is from the community college space. And if you look at my post about humanizing the classroom, I basically just translated what one of these experts, Michelle Pacansky-Brock, what she said in the resource John shared with me. So yeah, my point here is just to say, think about these 4 words. Think about valued, known, respected, safe. Valued, known, respected, safe. Valued, known, respected, safe. You want these to be hallmark emotions of your class. You want this to be the emotional texture of your class. And this can be an emotional texture even of a learning space that's online. It's possible, right? I mean, we've got a little bit of it going right now, don't we? We've got a little bit of it going. I've gotten to see some of your names. I've gotten to see some of your hearts. I've gotten to affirm some of your ideas. We've got a little bit, just a little bit of value, known, respected, and safe here too. I've tried to make it safe by being very honest and vulnerable with the messiness of my own heart. So we're humanizing this space. And we get a huge advantage in our classroom online because we have a bunch more time to do it with those students than just 1 hour on a Friday on Crowdcast. So I'll just point you to a couple of basic resources, okay? You can screenshot that. That's an article where I talk about memorizing students' names. It is just incomprehensible to me that we wouldn't very athletically, very, like a memory athlete, try to memorize our students' names as quickly as we can, even though they're going to be right there on Zoom under their face. We want to have these people in our minds a little bit, at least a little bit, as soon as possible. We normally do that. We should do it now. First day of school index card activity. I like to ask the students, tell me who you want to be. Describe the person you want to be. I'm not so much looking for your job, your career, your college. I'm looking for descriptors. Somebody sees you in 10 years. How do they describe you? Somebody knows you in 10 years closely. How do they describe you? I want those words from my students. I want them on an index card with their name on one side so that I can start to memorize that information too. Well, why? Because I can speak to that when I'm seeking to connect with students one-on-one. I can use that language that they have selected to make them know, I see you. I respect that you want to be a helpful person, a successful person, a hardworking person, a kind person. I love that. I'm with you on it. And that's why I'm about to light you up, because you've kind of been, it looks like you're playing a video game during our Zoom sessions. That literally happened multiple times. By the end of spring, my Zoom sessions were truly terrible, like remarkably bad. I just had no clue what I was doing. So, Barb, you're talking about hiding faces with the camera off. So this is one of those things that I would recommend having as a department or a grade level or a school, because to me, this is just like one of those policies that can be set. One of those basic expectations is when you're in synchronous sessions, we need to see your screen. Right. But the reason I recommend talking about it with multiple colleagues is, one, if it's normal across the school, it'll be easier for everyone to enforce right out of the gate. And two, if there's any like nitty gritty, legal type things that your bosses might be worried of, then you can kind of have those discussions. But I really think that for synchronous sessions to be their best, you need to see faces. So I'm going to try to establish that right out front. Like, I need to see your face. If I can't see your face, I need some reason why, and I'm going to follow up just to see what's going on, see if I can help. And there are bound to be circumstances where a child can't, and we've got to be human about this, but we want to where we can make it happen. Yeah. So Heather, exactly right. Some schools are going to have policies. You got to have the camera off. For example, if you're recording your Zoom sessions for people to watch asynchronously, then there's legalities to having the students' faces on there. Zoom really needs to make a setting. Maybe it's already there, but where you can turn off recording the faces. Because I had this, I told you, this PD in New Mexico the other day, and I loved it. It went really well, but I can't really share it with anybody because a bunch of people's faces on there, and I don't want to do that. Okay, so and then I want to camp out on moments of genuine connection, because to me, if there's only one strategy that you use for relationship building, if you use this, you will have the lion's share of students feeling very much like you care about them. Well, why do we want them to feel like we care about them, Dave? Come on, our job is mastery. Well, I want them to feel like we care about them. Maybe I should rephrase. We do want to actually care about them, right? Like, we don't just want to fake that we care about them. We do want to work to care about them. That's inner work. But then we want them to know that we care about them, because care is a part of teacher credibility. Teacher credibility has one of the largest effect sizes in John Hattie's visible learning literature. So I got it somewhere, but there's coffee all over it. In the Distance Learning Playbook from Doug Fisher, Nancy Fry, and John Hattie, there's a whole chapter on teacher credibility from a distance. And it's not because it's a buzzword. It's because the effect size of a child thinking that you're a good teacher, that you can do your job really well with them, it's huge, has a massive impact. So MGCs, moments of genuine connection, are a way to make sure a child understands that you care. But let's just kind of break down our words, okay? When I say moments, we're talking brief. These are 30 to 60 second attempts at connection. It's, for example, let's see. Yeah, Austin, you're new in my class this year. We've barely gotten to know each other, but I wanted to pull you aside today after the Zoom because I just want you to know I appreciate what you wrote in your start of the year letter. I also am a big fan of the University of Michigan football team, and I know this year we're going to kick some butt learning world history together. Thanks so much for being here. It's brief. It is very often, if you're pressed for time, one-sided, but it's an attempt at making sure Austin knows that I see him, I know him, I value him, I respect him. Okay? So brief means that we're way more likely to be able to do a lot of them over the school year. Connection means that we're trying to make students feel those certain ways, valued, known, respected. Genuine. This is where we got to deal with this guy right here, the center of our being, our heart, our spirit. We must work within ourselves to actually genuinely care about our students. And I'm going to say it in case it's not obvious. I don't, by default, genuinely want to connect with all my students. Some of them drive me crazy. Some of them offend me. Sometimes they hurt me. They cause me pain with their insensitivity. So when we say genuine, we're saying we go into those annoyances, those frustrations that we have. We honestly search them. And then we deal with what we find. A lot of times it may be we need to just forgive. We maybe need to realize the student is not trying to be offensive, right? They could care less about offending me. They're just, for whatever reason, they don't think what they did was offensive, right? Or maybe I do think there was a little bit of intentionality behind a rude comment. Well, now I'm going to follow up and seek to repair, to explore, did I do something like to offend you? Because the other day when you did this in the Zoom session, it kind of like dinged me a little bit. And I was thinking about it afterwards. And I don't want there to be anything messed up in our relationship because we got a whole semester together. And we might as well have a good time doing it. So I'm asking you honestly, won't hold it against you. Did I do something to ding you, to offend you? So from a distance, okay, I'm seeing people asking that. From a distance, I got Stacy on here somewhere. Stacy's in our call. I got you, Stacy. Look at that on the bottom. Stacy from Wisconsin gave me this idea. So this works for Zoom. I don't think it works for Meet, but Zoom has a waiting room. So Stacy gets to class 5 minutes early. Stacy brings in one student at a time, a handful of students each day, and seeks a quick MGC with the student or two or three or four that she can pull in from the waiting room while class is not quite yet in session. Or maybe she tells her students, hey, you can expect that. You need to be ready to go at 9 o'clock or whatever for first hour for the synchronous session. But I'm going to pull people in one at a time on a regular basis. So just because I'm not live at 9 and you're still in the waiting room, I will have you all in there by 9:05. And she's doing this to just connect with a few per day. You're not going through a whole 30 student roster one at a time into a class. It would take forever. And once you get 25 kids in there, it's not going to feel very, very personal when you're, the first kid's watching you do this with the 25th kid. So it could be a before Zoom. It could be, if you're doing Google Meet, say, student 1, student 2, student 3, I need you both to stay after real quick. Other students, you're free to go, but I need you 3 to stay after. And then you quickly attempt a connection there. If you're using a learning management system that allows audio feedback, audio notes, like our school is moving to Canvas. I understand, I haven't seen it yet, but there's some way to do pretty efficient audio messaging to students. It could be that way. It could also be, so the thing I encourage you to think about, the thing I encourage you to think about is the fact that, well, I want you to just ask yourself this question. Has anyone ever made you feel valued through a text message, through an email? Ever made you feel valued from a super brief call? So all of those tools are at our disposal. We want to really focus on making this a sustainable practice that we track, that we keep track of. When we keep track, we're making sure that every child is having an attempted connection from us. We're not leaving it to chance. Okay. And I really need to hit the brief, the moments, because I don't want you to burn yourself out trying to call all your students every week. If you're teaching secondary, my goal is to do this once every 2 weeks. So I have 120 students. So if I hit 3 per roster per day, I will get through just about all my roster every 10 class days. Kelly Gallagher said often audio comments to students are more powerful than written. So I'll share you a study about that, which is probably where Kelly's citing that from, because there is evidence to support that. Okay, here's some more links that you can screenshot that will give you more specifics. Happy to go in depth on any of those others. Just make sure you're clicking ask a question if you don't want me to miss your question. All right, so let's just talk about a few more practicalities, and then we're going to end my prepared remarks and we're going to go into Q&A. So you might have seen the post that I wrote maybe 7 days ago about humanizing distance learning spaces. This is the one that John Reynolds shared with me, my brother from another mother, John. And a lot of these ideas come from Michelle Pacansky-Brock. Her website is brokansky.com. This is about humanizing, but it's also about relationships. Oh yeah, there's the blog post. Okay, so very practical now. We're talking about stuff you can go make right after this. Brief intro video that tells a story. Let me know if you can hear this. Can y'all hear that? It's really quiet. Okay. Well, look, I think for the sake of time, I'm not gonna click it. Okay. Yeah, I apologize. I didn't test out that technology piece. But if you go to this article, you can find all of these videos embedded. What Dr. Williams is doing in this video, she's a calculus teacher at a community college, is she is in like 2 minutes telling the story of her becoming their teacher. And let's see here. These are all the questions that she dings through in that video. It's really fast. A lot of these details have nothing to do with education, nothing at all. They're just, but what they're doing is crafting her, Dr. Williams, as a human being in the minds of her students. Oh, she worked at a food service place in college. I work at a food service place at college too. Oh, she likes math homework. I hate homework. She's weird. She's humanizing herself really briefly right out of the gate. It's the first thing students see in her online learning courses is this brief video. Now, it's pretty, I will put that link in the chat. It's pretty polished. So to like take off pressure, from you all, I made a really not polished one. All I would change is don't do it in your sweatshirt, because that's not going to communicate credibility very well. But in this video, you can see this took me like 15 minutes to make because I had to try it a couple times. But in this video, I'm just using the bullet points from the article. And I've got a list of things I want to say in front of me. I'm looking at my phone, and I'm just trying to keep it at 3 minutes. And I'm telling my students, just like Dr. Williams, this is how I became your teacher. So we're accomplishing not just the relationship, not just humanizing the space, but we're also accomplishing the teacher credibility belief. We're saying with our story, this is a person who's a teacher on purpose. Sometimes our students have teachers and it's like, how did this happen to you? Who put you at gunpoint and forced you to become a teacher? Because it seems like that happened, and I'm really sorry, but I wish you wouldn't be mad at me, your student. It's not my fault that teaching happened to you. So when we can start with the story of how we became a teacher, it achieves a lot of things. Another important point, this came out really clearly in my community's feedback from the spring, is that students and parents really appreciate some videos from us, some videos from the child's actual teacher of record. So there are so many great YouTube videos online that I know that we would rather use in a lot of cases. Like many of the videos in my subject areas do a better job teaching a subject than I could. I don't have time to get all the images and make all the jokes and do all the transitions and stuff. I'm not a video editor, and I wouldn't have time anyways. But I think an important point that the distance learning experts make is that there's a big benefit that comes from a relationship standpoint when you are the one at least introducing the YouTube video that you're sending your students to. So the more videos you can make for your instruction, the better. That's the point. The more you can make, the better. If you're really, really, really uncomfortable with it, like if you just hate being on camera, then for you, the goal is going to be try to do one in the next month or two or one per week. But I promise you that this does produce a benefit in terms of making all students feel valued, known, respected, and safe, making all students feel like you are a good teacher and not just a YouTube DJ. I feel like that sometimes, YouTube DJ. Last piece, second to last for this section is using video postcards. So in this one, the professor, she's in Disney World or something. And she's just like, hey, students, I'm at Disney World. I bet you're not. Sucks to be you. No, she's just saying hi to her students. She's saying, this is a place that I like to be. So I would recommend, just if you're out for a walk, if you're having coffee some morning and it pops into your mind, you're thinking of your students, just send them, get out your recording device, make a brief video. I mean, hers is 19 seconds, and just put it on your announcements stream in Google Classroom. That'll humanize. And then the last piece, this is where we get into the research. So somebody mentioned Kelly Gallagher saying audio feedback was better than written. This is the study where that came from. It's crazy. Look at this. Students in the experimental group who received the audio feedback, not the written feedback, they were more satisfied with it. And this is the crazy part. They're more likely to do what the feedback says, to actually put it in practice. So whatever your online learning management system is, Canvas, Edu, there's a million, Classroom, try to do some research to see how you can give audio feedback. And if you don't know, then the tech expert in your district does, because they've been reading about this stuff all summer. Because they nerds, tech experts, y'all nerdy, and we love you. Thank you. Thank you for being nerdy. We appreciate you. We appreciate you. Dawn says she earned maximum credibility points with her tech center students when she shared hunting pictures with them. Right. That would give me some major credibility in my town too. Major cred. Okay, and then the last piece that I'll look at before we go to Q&A is identifying high opportunity students. I love this way of thinking because it's a more learning, less stress way of thinking. Not all students need a bunch of individualized interaction from you, right? I think we should have an MGC game. We should have moments of genuine connection we're attending with all of our students, but some get way more out of that intervention than others. That's true, right? So what the community college profs find is that if you can just ask students this question, how are you feeling about learning in this course this year? especially online. And if you just make note of all the ones who have a negative emotion attached on that survey to this question, then those are students who are going to always get more out of your attempted connections. And they also recommend, as soon as you look at that survey, take 30 seconds, send a direct message to those students using whatever your platform is, and just it's a personal message. Hey, Anita, I noticed that you're nervous about this school year, doing this online like we're doing. I totally get that. I'm a little bit nervous too. And I did notice you're going to be taking care of your younger siblings. So I want you to know that I'm here for you. I'm committed to partnering with you so that you can succeed, even though that's a hard situation. That doesn't take me very long to type up. But I'm sending it to somebody who has identified, I don't feel good. That's the exact person who needs really quick, personalized feedback. So we don't have to do it for every student, but just the students who answer for us in the first week that they're feeling scared or nervous or overwhelmed. All right. I see that I have some great questions coming in. Love it, love it, love it. We might be done. Yeah, a bit early with our prepared remarks. So let's do this. Let's take a 3-minute break. If you are not taking a break, you're ready to rock, then answer what helped the most from this so far. And sure, I'd love to hear what topic you want me to do next. I got a lot of topics I'm planning for the fall. Well, like for ASAP. Much love to you, John. And then make sure that you get your questions submitted. So I'm gonna put my whole screen up. Yes. Make sure that you have got a question submitted, okay? And what I would love to hear in the comments is, what do you think is going to be most helpful for you right now? You're doing that in the comments. And in the question, you're saying, I'd like to hear more about this, Dave. I'd love to go into greater specificity there. Do you have an idea for this specific scenario that my school is going to be in? I want to see that. All right. And what I'm going to do is dismantle this massive pile of boxes that is my standing desk so that I can get comfy. It's comfy time. It's Q&A time. We're going to have a little fireside chat about your questions. Can't wait. For my folks asking how to access the replay, just copy the URL at the top of your screen. Looks like it's crowdcast.io/e/how-to-build-strong. Hey, Hattie, will you grab this coffee? Thanks, honey. Hattie's been standing here the whole time, just waiting. Okay. All right. Fireside chat time. Nope. We're almost done with the 3-minute break. Almost done. Thank you, honey. I appreciate that advice. I'll take that. You good?
I'm fine.
All right. About to get back to it. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start going through the questions. We've got 18. I love it. You can add to them live. I'm going to close our screen here. I'll pull it up if I need to bring up like a relevant blog article. Also, if you're watching replay, I will put blog links, relevant blog links in the chat. So if you scroll up to the chat, you'll start to see some links getting shared as appropriate. So Katie had asked, and I appreciated this question Katie submitted in advance, and Ika, you too. What does day one first time Zooming look like? So I'm thinking it's definitely a slideshow, and it's why do we use slideshows on the first day? Why do I use them? Because it's a pretty structured day, and I want to make sure that I'm getting through the things that I want to achieve. I'm demonstrating my credibility by doing that, right? I'm demonstrating this teacher has a plan for the year. The teacher has a plan. So I think you're using the slideshow that you used last year, if you used one. If you didn't, you are trying to you're trying to go through your beliefs. You're trying to go through a little get to know you activity, like my index card activity is what I use. That's usually like as soon as you walk in, start filling out this index card. And then you're just going through some of those pertinent day one procedures, expectations. I know a lot of teachers just think, oh, that's so lame. Like, don't do that. You're crushing the souls of children. It should be only get to know you for like 900 days first. And I'm kind of teasing, but I just don't find that a warm but kind of business-like approach. I don't find that harms my relationships with students long term. And I think that's really because of the moments of genuine connection intervention. I track those, I work on those all the time, and therefore our relationships are fine. So some people talked about team building exercises and things like that. I think that might be especially important this year. I'm thinking about adolescent learners and teenagers, how bummed they're going to be about missing the social aspect of school. So that might be something to ponder, but I'll be honest, I don't think I'll do much of that. My classroom works because of the things that I've shared with you. It's a warm place that students mostly like to be because of what we've talked about. So those are my thoughts on day one. Happy to go more specific. And folks, if you look at the questions, you can vote them up. So if you're looking through the question list, we got 19. You can vote them up, and I'll get to them faster. But I will be going through all. As I said, I budgeted a full hour, so and the replay will bookmark all these. So all right. Oh no, I prematurely closed one. Okay, Gene. In addition to teacher-student relationships, how do we foster student-student relationships and collaboration from a distance? So the primary way that I build student-student relationships is through discussion. So in my class, Think, Pair, Share, Conversation Challenge, and Pop-Up Debate are the methods that I use. But I want to show you the 3 apps that I'm looking at and thinking about using. I don't know if my district's going to allow these or not, but these look like if I had my druthers, I would use these. Okay. All right. So for conversation, I really like the idea of Flipgrid. So even if you look at their this image right here, let me make this bigger. Okay, let me make sure it's big for you all. Yeah. So Flipgrid basically allows for you to create a prompt or maybe a prompt video, and then students can make videos in response to that or in response to each other. So it's like a asynchronous discussion tool. And if you see right here on their example, welcome to our class. Welcome to our Classroom Grid community. This is a place where we will learn together and share ideas. In 90 seconds, share something that makes you, or makes you smile. That would right there start to build student relationships. I just need to see if that's possible in my school's technology policies. If it's not, then I'll try Zoom breakouts maybe, or like micro scheduled Zooms. But I'm a little worried about Zoom breakouts because a Zoom breakout to me with students is like me telling students to go talk outside. Here we are in our class. Now go talk outside, everybody. So I'm really hoping to be able to use something like Flipgrid. All right. And I'm totally planning to build student to student through brief conversations and whole class discussions. Start of the year, you just make some of those about you, students sharing themselves. Seeing some follow-up chatter on the side. Gene's saying Flipgrid made some fantastic updates released on Wednesday. So good. Thanks, Flipgrid team. And Flipgrid is free too. That's another big thing. Some of the other tools that I'm looking at are not free, so I'm not sure how I'm going to handle that. I know there was a question about apps, and I want to move to that right now. There we go. Oh, yeah, here it is. So Betsy asked, and Barbara asked kind of a follow-up question to this. This is related to what we're talking about. Barbara, I'm gonna do your follow-up question first. She said, I want to hear more about Moments Genuine Connection online, which we did cover, but she said, also, what apps are you planning on using this year? She said, I'm looking closely at Parlay and Edpuzzle. So same. So we got let's see. Oops. Okay. Nope. So there's basic things I've been writing about forever and using forever. Article of the week, pop-up debate, interactive lecture, aka interactive direct instruction, comes from Mike Schmoker's book Focus. All these things yield powerful results in my classroom for the class culture, for the students' academic growth. So Parlay looks amazing for article of the week, plus a little bit of discussion. Parlay allows you to post a stimulus. So it could be a video. They've got a bunch of their own stuff, but I would just use it with my article of the week. I would have a little video of me introducing the article of the week like I normally do on Monday to try to hook students into it. And then they write in response to it. And then they can respond to each other's writing, which would majorly, I think, increase engagement with AOW. And then you can even use Parlay with in-person discussion. So I think you could also use Parlay. This would be a big stretch and maybe would explode, but you could use Parlay to facilitate a Socratic seminar where students have Zoom open and Parlay open. And you could potentially do that at the end of an article of the week or an article of the week series, which is more what I do now, so students could build more knowledge. So that is, that's something that I'm really looking at too, Barbara. I already said Flipgrid for pop-up debates, asynchronous debate. I think that could be really cool. And as I write about in chapter 4 of my book, I do like to record pop-up debates later in the year so students can see themselves and critique themselves as speakers. The Flipgrid will let that happen right away. And then finally, Edpuzzle, like Barbara is saying, right at the start of the distance learning playbook, Fisher, Hattie, and Fry, they say that basically Edpuzzle, but interactive videos of direct instruction have a huge effect size on student learning. And Edpuzzle just lets you, it lets you make a video and pause to ask questions that it can automatically grade, or it lets you take a YouTube video and add questions throughout and shorten it and clip it. So it's prep. All this stuff is prep, but those tools are the only three I'm exploring. Now, Betsy's question was, which Barbara attached hers to, Betsy's was, if you do the checklist method for Moments Genuine Connection, how does it work if you see the same students multiple times per day? Often I feel like I run out of relevant questions and check-in topics. I teach in a small country school. So Betsy, it does become awkward after a while if you do it too much. So I would try once a week to work through your checklist, and then do, focus on the other things that you have to do with those students when they're with you, because just making sure you're attempting will take care of your relationship needs. Trish, veteran teacher looking for suggestions connecting with students online in the new school district. Yeah, so obviously the hardest thing about being a veteran teacher at a new district is nobody knows you. And so you know all this stuff about teaching. A lot of it worked in the past because it was good, but some of it worked in the past because people know you. Some of what I do as a teacher, now that I've been at Cedar Springs for 10 years, it works especially well because I'm known. I'm a member of the community, students' older siblings have had me, etc. So that's the hardest thing about switching to a new school when you have experience, is you have to see what they see, and they see a person who's new. They don't see 20 years of experience or what have you. So you just got to think about that. The great thing that you have going for you, Trish, is that this is all super new to everybody. So your newness is going to blend in a little bit more easily. I would just try to be mindful of that. Okay. Oh my gosh. I can see there's so many good things in the comments, by the way. And I just want everyone to know, I really appreciate the sharing in the comments, because that's rich for me afterwards. And it's so rich for the people that are sitting here like, when's this guy going to move to the next question? Come on, dude, move on. So thank you for offering entertainment and enrichment on the side. Jordan, my friend Jordan says, my high school in San Gabriel, CA is starting completely online. Do you have any ideas or suggestions for first day, first week relationship, community building activities or routines via Zoom or Google Classroom or similar digital platforms? I think Jordan submitted this in advance, so we did cover what I am planning to do. I don't even think I said this. Right now, my school starts September 8th, and right now the plan is on in person. So I'm kind of not wrapping my head around that fully yet. More and more schools around us are moving to online. So I'm fully planning for online, because that'll be the biggest, that'll be way harder for me than in person. But I guess my point is, Jordan, I'm prepped. I haven't gone looking for more activities than what I've already shared, what I already know works, and how that translates to the classroom, because right now I think I'll be good with those. I'm seeing some people in the chat saying same. Yeah. So we'll just see. But I think a whole nother PD session could be, if it ends up really happening that we're in person, how do you connect with students, through masks and all that? And I'm happy to talk my thoughts on that too. Dawn, we'll want to audit your class in the fall. Is that a possibility? You're going to see something that looks real normal and regular. But yeah, I don't even know if that would be. Email me, Dawn. You know how to email me. Shoot me an email, and that'll remind me to actually ask my boss. But I'm planning to, this is going to be, so people who've been around my writing forever know that when I started, it was really just Common Core. I was just trying to learn Common Core because I knew nothing about it. So with complete, pure novice eyes, I wrote through that. Well, this summer is feeling like summer 2012. I'm such a novice for distance learning. And so I'm taking what other people do that works. And I'm just translating, I'm processing, I'm connecting to try to build my understanding of distance learning. So what I'm saying, Dawn, is that even if you can't audit my class, you're going to get a lot this year, God willing, of my writing that's focused on nitty gritty practicality stuff as I work it out myself. Emily Dia, teacher and academic dean in North Carolina. We're starting in person, but all of our relational parts of school day will be virtual, looking for strategies and routines to share with teachers that will span the year when we likely return to distance learning. Emily, email me and maybe we can set up a Zoom and you and me can tag team it. All right. And we can take what you saw today and we can we can make it even better for uniquely your staff. There is my email. But I think what you saw today is the core of how I'm going to approach this. Okay. Thank you for that question, Emily. Kiana, thanks for sharing what you post in your classroom. I love it. My question, do you think all teachers should have a general statement like that, beliefs in their classroom? Mandatory. It should be something that's more personalized for each teacher. Good question, Kiana. Those beliefs, I didn't do a good job explaining this. Those beliefs are directly from research on beliefs that make a huge difference in student motivation. So Camille Farrington and the Chicago Consortium on School Research, they did this really cool literature review of tons of research on how to help adolescents become learners. I think the article is called Teaching Adolescents to Become Learners. And it's like a book. It's free. It's a PDF. Camille Farrington. I'll put a link. But they found that one of the biggest factors in teaching adolescents to become learners is whether or not they have, she called them academic mindsets, but they're really just beliefs. And she had 4. She had what I call the belonging belief, the value belief, the effort belief, and the efficacy belief. So those things that were on my screen are really just riffs on those beliefs, which she synthesized from a ton of the research. Just trying to pull that up. Yeah, there we go. So my point is that I do think, Kiana, that if a teacher is ready to own these, ready to own their responsibility to help all children in the room believe this, regardless of background or identity, to help every child have access to this internal source of motivation, then I think teachers should use this. You can tweak the language a little bit. Like, the language isn't magic, but those beliefs are very powerful for student motivation. So I don't, I would encourage personalization within limits, because I don't want teachers to lose the power of those 4 beliefs. And the other belief that I'm after is teacher credibility. So Carrie, how do we best shift to mastery assessment during this time? This really depends on what your school is already doing. If your school has been doing traditional assessment all along, and now you're trying to teach students distance learning and teach teachers distance learning and also teach mastery assessment and teach that to teachers, then I think it's going to be a super heavy lift for teachers. If it's just you that wants to try doing it, then and your administrator's fine with it, I would say, if you feel comfortable with the distance learning transition and guiding your students through that, then go ahead. Mastery assessment does have some things about it that are way more immediately intelligible to a learner than traditional assessment. But at the same time, most of our learners are used to traditional assessment. And so you just have to discern your situation, how much change people are going through, and then decide if you want to go for it. But so I'm more thinking about whether or not now's the right time. Catlin Tucker, is a big advocate for this type of approach, and her stuff could give you a lot more nitty gritty. And she's doing a lot right now on her blog and on Twitter. Barbara, how do you plan on using the index card system on the first day? So I'm thinking, Barbara, that I'm going to make like a Google slide that they're going to fill out. I'll push that out through Canvas. I'm assuming you can do in Canvas what you can do in Google Classroom. That's what I've been told. So you push out a slide template for them and then give them 5 minutes or so to share it, to fill it out right there during class, and they can put pictures on there. And then I'll just print those out small and kind of make a little set of flashcards for them, or maybe like a binder for each class. That's what I'm thinking right now for the index card activity. Looks like people are saying Desmos could use that. Cami could work for that. So I'm not familiar with those platforms. So I really appreciate those shares. Meta, how would you launch teaching writing at the beginning of the year? What are you planning to do for 6th, 12th grade, perhaps? So, I mean, basically, Meta, this year and for the last 4 or 5, I've been teaching world history. So writing for me is 100% situated around content, around material that I want students to deeply understand and be able to communicate about. So for me, quick writing to learn, or in my book I call it provisional writing, that is writing that's happening regularly. And I will use the discussion feature of Canvas to facilitate that type of writing to learn. But the guy to look at on this stuff is Matthew Johnson, but I can never remember the name of this blog. Matthew Johnson. His book Flash Feedback is really good. Somebody's going to beat me to it. I can feel it. Where's his blog? But he is writing a lot. MatthewMJohnson.com. That's what always gets me, Matt. Matt's writing a lot about this, and he wrote a lot about this in the spring. No matter if you're running a 612 writing classroom, definitely look at Matt's stuff because he's doing it right now, and he's doing it really well. Yep, his blog is good. Yes, and it's very good. Yep, and Jen Gonzalez does have an interview with Matt on her blog too. The interview is called Flash Feedback, same title as his book. Kara, I'm so glad to hear you say that his book was a game changer. I'm going to screenshot that and send it to Matt. He will be very happy. Yep, he worked very hard on that book, and it's a lot of the same things we've been talking about: more learning, less stress. Nicole, yeah, he's a good presenter, great presenter. Yep, and he's writing such good things right now, really good things. Okay, Julia, how do you recommend helping colleagues who are struggling with negativity but seem stuck and almost unwilling to see situations in a different light? Julia, I wrote something for you. I mean, this actually might not be for your circumstance, and might have already seen it, but last night I was very nervous about this piece because some people are in very hard circumstances thinking about the fall. And so I put a big disclaimer at the start of this piece. How to deal with bad feelings about teaching this year. Self-examination protocol for understanding and doing something about negative emotions. So Julia, take a look at that. But you know, the hard thing about our colleagues right now is that many of them we haven't connected with much in person for half a year. So those relationships, you know, they're not maybe as strong as they used to be. And also everyone has changed in the last 6 months. Some people in massive ways, some people in at least a little bit, but the person that we knew on March 1st is probably not the person we know today. So yeah, I have some colleagues who it's like they're totally this close to doing a leave of absence, and they're like in the middle of their career, but they're in a deep, really hard place about teaching that I don't think they would have predicted 6 months ago, or I would have predicted. And so I'm not sharing that article with those colleagues because it's like, I respect what you're going through, and I don't want to sit here and pretend that I can give you advice because of how deep and dark this is. But if you feel like you have enough of a relationship, that article is meant to help that colleague. So Julia, take a look at it, see if you find a way to introduce it. You know, the last thing that you want to do for somebody who's in pain is to come up and stomp on it. Don't want to step on pain. Don't want to step on pain with truth. Truth over pain doesn't work. But understanding the pain is like the first way out, knowing where the pain comes from. And that's really what our colleagues need who are in the hardest places, and it's for some deep bitterness against leadership, deep bitterness against leadership at our school, leadership at our state, leadership at our nation, bitterness at other people, right? Like bitterness about masks, one way or the other. Like I've really seen it all. And I know that y'all have seen it too. So we just need to try to meet them where they're at and truly give them some tools if they're open to it to processing through, because they'll be super miserable if they just camp out in the negative emotion whirlwind. I mean, a lot of people need to stop reading the news or watching it. That will help a lot of people. Well, I got to be a good citizen and be informed for the election in the fall. I think you probably know what you want to do this fall for the election. If you don't, tune back in November 1st and catch up. But you following every last piece of the soap opera is destroying your mental health. That's just some of what I'm thinking through with that. Great question. Thank you so much for asking that question. Can you re-show the slide with the link to the Genuine Connection Tracking website? You got it, Sarah. Thank you. All right. That's going to be your real jumping off point for a lot of that. I'm worried about discussing students' home life or touching upon personal topics during this tragic time. How do you suggest approaching this topic with students? I don't want to just avoid these conversations. So what I think the place to start, Brianna, is I'm going to pull up my humanization article here. Because I want to make sure I get the right language. But the first question we need to make sure we ask students in our beginning of the year survey is, how are you feeling about the year? Because those are going to be our high opportunity students. But the second question we want to make sure that we ask is, what is the one thing most likely to interfere with your success in this class? I'm going to copy that in the chat. What's the one thing most likely to interfere with your success in this class? Because basically this is a place for students to share what they want to share. They may not share the deep, dark, nitty gritty. Another technique, Brianna, that helps a lot with what you're asking about is sending a note home to parents, a communication to parents through whatever your mechanism is for that, and asking them, hey, if you could just tell me what you want your teachers to know about your child, like what would it be? And if you Google start of the year parent letter, you'll find articles that talk about this strategy. A lot of my colleagues use it. It yields oftentimes a lot of communication from parents that is helpful information. So the child may not want to share with you the tragedy that they've experienced, but a parent oftentimes will want you to know that so that you can keep it in mind. Oh, Maureen, y'all are welcome to come up north for a great craft beer crawl with Dave when this whole thing is over. Vancouver, British Columbia. Vaccine Celebration Edition with Maureen. Maureen's going to take us on to town. All right. Awesome. Lauren, I don't have that blog post. I haven't written that. So, first day letter to parents for teachers. I bet. I know I've seen. It's basically, I don't want to, lots of time, people can fast forward. First day, you're trying to elicit from parents a quick email communication or something about their child. I'll try one more search query here. Okay, I can't. What I will do is I'll email out to this group on this chat what my colleague does, because I know that she does it. And when we have our team meetings, she shares like pertinent information for those of us who teach the same students on the roster. And it elicits a lot of feedback from parents. So Catherine, for students who need an intervention virtually, I'm assuming that you're talking about like so basically students needing accommodations virtually. I'm still on the front edge of learning that, and I'm going to be looking to my special education colleagues for help and insight and best practice resources. Stay tuned. I'll try to write an article about that. For students who need an academic intervention virtually, right now our school is making it so that there's a chunk of our day that is just for that. So if I, for example, identify that 40% of my students have not been proficient on this week's writing assignment, my job is to pull them the next week during the small group part of the day and talk to them, probably show them an exemplar piece of writing and say, let's take some notes. These are the things that we want to make sure that we do in this type of writing. Okay, now you're going to workshop your piece. Share it with me when you're done, and we will talk about it that way. It really depends what type of intervention you're talking about. So if you want to ask a follow-up on that, I'm happy to go more specific. The article with the videos again, Meta, is a Humanizing article. That's the article. I should really do this. I should really show you my Chrome. I should really do that. So what you want is Dave Stewart Humanizing, and you'll find all of this, and you'll see the embedded videos right there. Okay, just remember, no sweatshirts when you're doing those intro videos. That's a hot mess. Somebody had to do it to show you what not to do. I nominated myself. Kiana, there's a lot of conversation about equity and anti-racist work in my district. Love to hear your thoughts about how relationships are crucial in making improvements in the area of equity and social justice. So this is Matthew K's big point in his book, Not Light But Fire. If you want productive conversations about race, meaningful conversations about race, where people don't go into their shell or explode, if you want conversations that are actually going to move the ball forward, then you have to create a place that is safe, not just in word, but in truth. So he has a funny way of talking about the safe space that people will sometimes talk about. And he just says, every teacher in the country starts the year saying, this is a safe space. But a lot of us act like it's a magical incantation. You waved a wand and now it's safe. And now students are safe to learn. He gets very rigorous with that idea and basically says, no, you've got to build great relationships with your students. That's why he does the Burn 5, where he spends the first 5 minutes of class just connecting with students personally. He talks about this idea of pop-up conversations. Don't get it confused with pop-up debates. Matt's saying pop-up conversations about race. So, for example, last night, somebody tweeted something messed up, or somebody got in trouble for kneeling or something like this. Something happened yesterday. Going into class tomorrow, rip roaring, we're going to talk about this. He says, do that very cautiously, because these issues, like that event that you want to talk about with students, that will still have happened a week from now. It will still have happened 2 weeks from now. He says, basically, feel free to mention to your students, like, I want to talk about what happened yesterday. I want you to know that it's important to me and it's connected to our class. But we are going to prepare for that over the next couple of weeks through the lessons that we'll have or whatever. He says, basically, if you want to have a good conversation about race, it's better to go in it super well planned. So yeah, this is the not light but fire, not light but fire. I think I think a great model of this, Kiana, my wife and I last night were watching. She found this on YouTube, and we just got into it, and like that was our date night. Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. Um, that is a YouTube channel that is not a channel, a series. I'll pull up a link here. Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man. So I mean, he talks to Matthew McConaughey. He talks to the home flippers. What's her name? Chip and Joanna. Talks to their family. Has some really interesting conversations. But the reason that I'm pointing that out is he's modeling what is so important for these conversations to work. He models a ton of grace. He models that you don't always have to be perfect. Like at one point, he talks to this in one of the episodes. He's sitting down with a family where the parents are white, and they have a white biological child, and then they have 3 other children who are Black. And he talks to the young lady, I forget her name, the daughter, and he says, this is just such a good moment. He says, does it ever feel awkward to you? And if awkward's not the right word, correct me. Does it ever feel awkward to you that when your friends come over and they see your parents and they kind of have a chuckle over it and they laugh? But what I'm saying is he's modeling right there that we don't always know the right words for talking about this, and we don't have to. We can give the folks that we're talking with permission to correct us. So I just think, schools that want to tackle this, like with full force on the first day of school, I'm a little nervous about that, because the people that seem to have a ton of experience and expertise making really rich, productive race conversations, like Matthew K., they're not necessarily saying in their writing, charge in, make it happen right out of the gate. They're saying, I love where your heart's at. I mean, he, in his intro to Not Light But Fire, he even says, I'm not going to spend a single second in this book trying to convince you that these conversations need to happen. I'm assuming if you're reading this book, you know they need to happen. I want to talk about how. And that's where I think a lot of the articles that are being written this summer, they're kind of just, they're engaging in a little bit of magical thinking, like it's just going to be very easy, and everyone who has a good heart will be able to facilitate good conversations like this. So those are my thoughts and comments. I truly believe that the beliefs of a human being cannot be, you can't force belief. The human being is autonomous in what they believe. The human being is autonomous in how they use their mind. So just like I can't force a child to learn, I can't force a child to change their beliefs. So I have 2 choices. I can partner with that truth. I can partner with reality. Okay. And I can try to learn then how to help children believe better things, because it is a much better thing to believe in the value and dignity of all people. It is a much better thing to be open ears, open heart when a group of people are reporting, I'm experiencing pain. I've been experiencing pain my whole life. My parents have, their parents have. This goes back. I'm reporting to you, things are not okay. Well, I think we want all children to be the type of human beings who will open their ears and their hearts to that, wherever it's coming from. My point is just, you can't say you're going to be an anti-racist school and now you're going to make sure that all those students believe in whatever it is you want them to believe. You have to be a little more sophisticated about it than that, I think. So, and I will also say, Lauren Brown just reminded me of it. So Lauren Brown has a blog post that she just wrote that is very nuanced and searching on these topics. And I read it this week and was very appreciated. Lauren, could you share that? I know it might feel awkward to share your own stuff, but I would really like to get your blog article in front of people, because whether you're teaching U.S. history or not, I think there's a ton you can take away from how Lauren is thinking about in countering these ideas in the classroom. Yeah, thanks, Lauren. She'll put that in the chat. All right. Okay, make sure I didn't miss anything there. Cool. Okay. Yes, Lauren, that's the one. Yep. How do we tell the story? How do you tell the story of U.S. history? So there's just so much conversation about the way that U.S. history is taught in the United States, on the right and the left. And I appreciate that piece for its nuance. So Carrie asks, how do you cultivate relationships with and support remote students when you also have in-person students? Carrie, I got bad news. I think you drew the most difficult straw. The hardest scenario, I think, for this fall is a scenario where you're teaching students in class while also live streaming or recording all of that. So if that is currently the expectation in anyone's school, I want to really encourage you to advocate and just use best practice, because the things that I'm doing in an in-person class will not play well live stream all the time. Direct instruction will work, right? But what about think, pair, shares? Going to be easy for someone who's just viewing the live stream to get disengaged at that point. Guided notes could work, but what about pop-up debate? That's not going to work as well. So what we were able to do in our district is, because initially the language was kind of sounding like that was what we were going to have to do. If a kid's at home quarantining for 14 days, you've got to live stream. Our new policy is just take what you would normally do if a student has to be gone for a long time, right? So you put together a packet or whatever. Normally that's what I would do. Or in the last few years, I'd point them to Google Classroom. So they're just saying this year that needs to be a little bit better. So this year, by the end of every day, you need to have your stuff posted on Canvas is going to be our rule. And it doesn't have to be a live stream recording of the class, but it should be an explanation of what was worked on in class, resources to support it, so that students who are not present are able to get access to what the rest of the class is doing. But so I think that communication change to me was really important. What do you normally do when a child's going to be gone for a week? How do you get them caught up? Do that, but just plan on that being, a normal thing. And so therefore systematize it, make it a part of your daily routine. And then for the relationship aspect, Carrie, you're going to use MGCs in person before or after class or during independent work. And then for your remote students, you're going to have to just, do Remind 101 or direct messages on Canvas or whatever you've got, and just try to keep the same rhythm with them as you do with your in-class students. But we don't have to connect with students every day, not even close. So if you're in a setting, Lisa's asking, where you're socially distanced in the classroom, how do you do learning then? I haven't wrapped my head around this yet. A part of me does feel like teaching distance learning will be way easier than teaching in person like we're currently planning on, because we're currently planning on socially distanced as much as possible in the room, masks all the time, properly worn, and then in between class, like you're doing, you're spraying down all your surfaces, you as the teacher. So like before and after class, I'm busy. I'm spraying stuff down. During class, I'm technically not supposed to walk next to you and look at what you're doing on your desk, which is what I would always be doing during independent work or think, pair, share. So I haven't wrapped my head around this, Lisa. I think what I am going to be doing when we're finally meeting in our back to staff meetings is this: if this is what we're really doing, like if we get there, and for me it's 4 weeks away, but if we get there and we're having our back to school meetings, then I'm just going to say we need to really talk about this. What is best practice going to be for our school? Because if we follow the letter of the law for social distancing, technically I got to stay in my little bubble up front. And if we have to do that, then we'll do that. Like, Stacy, thanks for bringing that fire. Thanks for bringing that intensity, Stacy. Thank you. Because if we have to do it, we will. We'll figure it out. And the students will know that we're all trying to do our best. And we will try to put a good face on, and we will try to communicate that their long-term flourishing matters and that this year matters. Lisa, it's a great question. Stacy says she reminds herself that we do hard things, even as she quietly weeps into her coffee. Helen, in terms of mastery, I've been reading that success produces motivation. Yes, and not the other way around. So in distance learning, it's important to get a lot of success in early. Yes, which reduces stress, promotes mastery. Helen, that is the most important thing to understand about the efficacy belief. The number one way to convince a human being that they can succeed at blank is to give them actual success in blank. Now, you want that success to have cost a little bit, right? This is where our art of teaching comes in. If I tell my students, we're going to write a ton in here this year, and on the first day of school, I have them write one word, and I say, look, you wrote a word. Don't you see? You got this. Like, that's going to seem very dumb to them. It won't enhance efficacy. But if I create a well-scaffolded writing assignment right out of the gate, and we do some type of share out exercise where I can point out strengths in the student work that's being shared, now we did something that took a little instruction, took a little effort, pushed my ninth graders where they're at, got shared out, very powerful, and got some specific feedback. Now we've created success that's going to mark in the child's mind and heart. And there are a few things, I don't think anything, that make efficacy like that. So to answer your question, yes, keep pulling on that thread. Seems like you have lots of confidence going into this year. Oh, love that. That totally depends on the moment. What are you least confident about? What unanswered or unanswerable questions are you currently grappling with? Kara, I'm really confused about in-person learning. As a middle-aged man with no comorbidities, and no one in my house with comorbidities, like I don't have to wrestle with the very real visceral fear that some of our colleagues are wrestling with. So I don't worry about that, and I understand that that's a privilege, and I'm thankful for that. I do worry though about having to police officer mask wearing, and having to think about sanitizing all the spaces. I worry about some of the guidelines that we're getting, like if a child checks out a book, it has to sit in the room for 3 days before anyone else can touch it. Like, just logistical things about in-person learning concern me. But I'm also not going to worry about it until it's actually staring me in the face. And what I am going to think about and engage with is distance learning, because it just seems like if this is what real learning looks like, then eventually we're going to have to go to a distance sooner or later. So I need to be ready for that. And Kara, I think I'm really trying to frame it for myself as an opportunity. This is a chance for me to learn a whole different way of teaching that I guarantee can produce wins for me for 10 years, for the rest of my career, 20 years. Like, I can gain insights this year that will help my students live this year and help my students in 10 years. So I think I'm just trying to keep that. Yeah. And Nicole, like, I acknowledge your pain. She says my hypochondria is off the chain. Like that's what I'm saying. I don't have that struggle, but I get that that is a very, very real concern for a lot of my colleagues. And that's what I was trying to say earlier. If you got a colleague who's just like afraid for their life, you might not want to send them my article about how to process through negative emotions, because they are having more of an existential search right now than that. Thoughts about assessing students during this time. I think we need to attempt to create assessments that give us information that we can act on as teachers. That's the goal always. Some of the classes I teach are AP World History, all ninth graders, open access class. So anybody who wants gets in. It's very challenging. But what I love about AP World History is that at the end of the year, you have a test. You know how the test will be structured, you know the basic material and skills that could be tested. And so every assessment in that AP World History class is all about, how are we doing? How's your knowledge? How are your skills? How are we progressing in terms of student-like behaviors? So, grading, I don't think a ton about. I just do what my school tells me to do for grading. I preach to my students all the time. The point isn't grading. Many of my students worry about grades a lot in the AP classroom. So that's a year-long project, getting them to value learning as a path to lots of cool things, including decent grades. Maybe not always perfect grades, but learning is a pretty good path to good, decent grades. So those are some things I'm thinking about with assessment. I have to get into my Canvas platform next week. I'm doing that so that I can see what my options are for assessment. I hope that Lisa gives you some things to think about. Lisa's saying in the comment, grading is an issue at this juncture. Yeah, and that's an issue at our school too. So in the spring, we didn't really do much with grades at all. In the fall, the plan is to grade normally, which for us is traditionally. But I'm sure that's going to produce a lot of problems. We're just going to have to wade through that water when we get there. So I'm more thinking about the things that can give me insight into what my students are currently struggling with. There is a point pun to be made there, Stacy. There really is. Yeah, so Joe is sharing that they're all pass-fail in the whole state of California. Yeah, so it just in that scenario, then you're preaching to students all the time. Learning is so valuable. Learning is what it's about. It's not about passing or failing. If you're teaching adolescents, you want them to be insulted that someone would tell them, if you pass, that's good enough. You want to stoke the fires of teenage indignation at being treated like a child. That's how I will frame it if we get to a pass-fail scenario. Do you understand that a lot of adults are happy if you just pass right now? They're treating you like a kindergarten student. You're being treated like a child. Are you okay with that? Me personally, I wouldn't be okay with that. I'd be trying to show people I can do this. I can do this better. Let's go. Yeah, teenage indignation is a powerful tool. By the way, that all the way back to Aristotle observed teenage indignation. He says, if you want credibility with teenagers, what you cannot do is make them feel condescended to. And that's true. I mean, they've actually shown, like, neurochemically, there's more of the stuff in us as teenagers that makes us really sensitive to being slighted. So Aristotle knew what was up. Gene, I'm glad we're going to keep you busy. All right, I'm showing 5 minutes left. I'm going to do some lightning round. So I did not think about when I started the video 5 minutes early that I only get 2 hours. Oops, just deleted a thing. So I put my email address. If you scroll up for it, Dave Stewart Jr., just remember that I'm reachable and I'm checking it every day right now. Being a good boy with the email for the most part. So reach out to me. And chances are you're going to give me an idea to write about, and I'm going to crank it out and answer you and everyone else who has that question. So I love your questions. We're teaching students remotely at the same time as in person. This is starting September 1 here in Ohio. By the way, congratulations on your governor not having COVID-19. I know we are discussing teaching online, but I'm mentally struggling with students wearing masks because I feel there's a barrier and disconnect between us now. You are right. This needs to be acknowledged up front. In Kate Murphy's book, You're Not Listening, she says that 55% of communication comes from right here. In other words, more of what I'm saying to you is coming from this than the words out of my mouth. We need to acknowledge that in the masked classroom and treat it as a problem that we will solve with our students. Your students at home are going to have a miserable time understanding you beneath the mask. Yes, in a live stream scenario, they are. The administrators need to hear this, and we need to start talking about ways to modify what the state is telling us to do so that it can be best for students. I really don't think the Ohio Department of Education is going to be knocking on the door of your school because you decided that live streaming the class wasn't the most sophisticated way that we could come up with for supporting students at home. And if your school decides that that's what we're doing, then we just got to say how it is. This is really hard. But I can't magically, I can't magically make you see my face unless they allow you to wear a shield. And I know there's see-through masks and stuff, so I don't know. Maybe we'll have to do that. I want to encourage you with the fact that you are a caring teacher. You're earnest about your job. You're going to do a great job for your students, given your constraints. But you're also not super person. You can't overcome your constraints, all of them. Any tips on parent engagement, Kiana? I would say reaching out to them early. At the end of my build relationships online post, I talk about parent phone calls. If you could do 3 positive parent phone calls per week, that would be a good baseline. If you could work it up to maybe you're doing 1 per day, 2 per day. These are brief calls about something positive, specific that you noticed in class. That will do so much for your parent engagement. And you can ask at the end of those conversations, how's it going? Is there anything that I could help with more? Emily's saying, if we're starting online and know we may go to in-person later, how much classroom management content should we go over initially on Zoom? Everything that you need to make Zoom work and nothing more should be done on Zoom if you're starting on Zoom. And then when you come back to class, you've got first day number 2. And now it's everything that students need to know about your in-class classroom management. But these are 2 distinct environments, 2 distinct sets of procedures and rules. Great questions. Appreciate them. You mentioned Canvas. My district's moving to this LMS, but it hasn't been smooth. How long have I been using it? 0 days. I start my first training next week. Any recommendations for getting the most out of it, but also helping students learn to navigate it? So I've heard their help documentation is amazing, and any question that you type into help, they have a video for that walks you through it. That's what I'm planning to do. I'm also planning to lean heavily on my colleagues who I know are better at this than me. Tips for how to talk to other teachers or your admin if the workload stress is getting to be too much. Lisa shared a link there. These are conversations we need to be having regularly and often. We need to be speaking truth to those who I believe desire it. Most of our administrators desire truth. And then if they don't, then we just need to speak truth to our colleagues. Thank you for sharing Stamped for a correct history of the nation regarding the Black experience. Thank you for that. I did not use an online whiteboard with Zoom, sadly. I'm really sad because I only have 20 seconds to tell you all that I appreciate you. I do appreciate you. If you'd like to talk to me about doing something like this with your school over Zoom, more face-to-face interaction, please email. I would be so delighted. That's my focus this fall.